Today we are taking a fascinating journey back in time to examine an era when mobile phone design was genuinely wild, creative, and incredibly diverse. Before the entire world transitioned to using identical black glass rectangles, the first decade of the 21st century provided us with some of the most memorable, stylish, and durable communication tools ever created. In this video, we will explore 13 iconic mobile devices from the 2000s that we still deeply miss today, looking at what made them so special and why they still hold a very warm place in our collective memories. We have to begin with the Nokia 3310. Released in 2000, it arrived before cameras, app stores, and endless notifications became normal parts of using a phone. What it offered instead was reliability, simplicity, and plenty of personality. The 3310 is remembered for Snake 2, customizable covers, long battery life, and a body that seemed capable of surviving almost anything. You could change its panels, compose a ringtone, choose a screen logo, and type messages without even looking at the keypad. In many families, it was passed from one person to another and continued working. Dropping it usually created more concern for the floor than for the phone itself. The nostalgia is not really about its tiny monochrome screen. It is about a time when receiving a text message felt exciting, and a phone could disappear into your pocket for days without demanding attention. Nokia sold around 126 million units, helping make the 3310 one of the most recognizable phones ever created. By 2003, phones were beginning to feel colorful and connected, and the Sony Ericsson T610 captured that change perfectly. Its metallic finish, compact shape, color screen, and joystick made it look far more advanced than many of the basic phones around it. The built-in camera was extremely limited by modern standards, but suddenly you could take a picture using the same device you carried for calls and messages. The pictures were tiny and blurry, but that did not matter. Being able to take a photo with your phone still felt incredible. You could also send files over Bluetooth, install Java games, use animated themes, and assign polyphonic ringtones that sounded much richer than the simple electronic beeps of earlier phones. The T610 also reminds us how much fun phone menus used to be. Changing the theme, moving through the icons, testing every ringtone, and adjusting the wallpaper could occupy an entire afternoon. It felt stylish, modern, and completely different from the Nokia and Motorola models around it. In 2004, the T-Mobile Sidekick II became more than a communication device. In the United States, it became part of youth culture. Its screen rotated with an instantly recognizable movement, revealing a full QWERTY keyboard underneath. Even today, watching that screen flip open is strangely satisfying. The keyboard made messaging fast and natural. AIM, Yahoo Messenger, email, and web access turned the Sidekick into a social hub before modern social media took over our lives. You could leave your computer and remain connected to the same conversations. For teenagers and young adults, that felt like freedom. The Sidekick made it possible to talk to friends almost anywhere, even when you were supposed to be paying attention to something else. Limited editions, celebrity appearances, and its unusual shape gave it a status that ordinary phones could not match. Many former owners still remember the sound and motion of flipping the screen open almost as clearly as the messages they typed on it. Later in 2004, the Motorola RAZR V3 made phones fashionable in a completely different way. It was remarkably thin for a flip phone, with a metal body, a sharp profile, and a flat keypad that glowed blue in the dark. Compared with the thick plastic phones that came before it, the RAZR looked almost impossibly slim. The RAZR was not loved because it had the best camera or the smartest software. People loved the way it felt. Flipping it open to answer a call felt dramatic. Closing it to end a conversation felt final in a way that tapping a red icon on a touchscreen never could. Its different colors became fashion statements, especially the famous pink version. More than 100 million units were eventually sold, making the RAZR V3 one of the defining mobile devices of its era. It represents something rare today. It was a mainstream phone whose physical shape mattered just as much as the technology inside it. The Sony Ericsson W810i arrived in 2006 and gave music lovers a phone built around their favorite songs. In the United States, Singular offered the device, bringing Sony's famous Walkman name directly into the mobile phone market. The black body, orange details, dedicated Walkman button, and music interface made it instantly recognizable. This was not simply a phone that could play music, it was designed to feel like a music player. Owners transferred MP3 files from their computers, organized small music libraries on memory stick cards, and listened through wired earphones. Before streaming gave us access to almost every song ever ever recorded. The tracks stored on your phone felt carefully selected and personal. Storage was limited, so you had to decide which songs deserved to stay. Removing one album to make room for another could feel like a serious decision. The W810i also included a 2-megapixel autofocus camera, Bluetooth, expandable storage, and Edge mobile data. But technical specifications do not fully explain why it is remembered so warmly. Every playlist reflected its owner. Your phone did not contain every song in the world, it contained your songs. The LG Chocolate VX8500 arrived on Verizon in the summer of 2006. It looked less like a traditional phone and more like a sleek music player. When closed, its glossy black front and glowing red touch controls gave it an almost futuristic appearance. Sliding it open revealed the number pad, while the controls on the front handled music playback and menu navigation. The design was beautiful, although the touch-sensitive buttons could sometimes be frustrating. Owners eventually learned exactly where to press and how lightly to touch the surface. The Chocolate supported MP3 and WMA music files, Bluetooth audio, Verizon's VCast services, and optional micro SD storage. But its greatest strength could not be found on a specification sheet. It was the way the phone looked and moved. It made an ordinary carrier phone feel special. Seeing one today brings back memories of Verizon stores, music commercials, downloadable ringtones, and the brief period when slider phones seemed like the future. Also in 2006, the Sony Ericsson K790A showed how seriously phone manufacturers were beginning to take mobile photography. This North American cybershot model borrowed its identity from Sony's dedicated digital cameras. Even the design encouraged you to hold it like a small camera. The sliding lens cover was one of its best details. Open the cover and the camera was ready to shoot. Turn the device sideways, press the physical shutter button, and it felt more like a compact camera than a phone with a camera added to it. Its 3.2 megapixel sensor, autofocus, best pic burst mode, image stabilization features, and xenon flash made it unusually capable for the time. That xenon flash was especially impressive. It could freeze movement indoors and produce a properly lit photo instead of another dark and blurry image. Modern phones take much better pictures, but the K790A made every photograph feel intentional. You did not take hundreds of pictures and choose the best one later. You selected a moment, pressed the shutter, and hoped the result was worth keeping. In 2007, Nokia released a phone that seemed determined to include everything. The Nokia N95 had a two-way sliding design. Push the screen in one direction and you found the traditional number keypad. Push it in the other direction and dedicated media controls appeared. It offered integrated GPS, Wi-Fi, a 5-megapixel camera, video output, a standard headphone jack, expandable storage, and support for Symbian applications. Nokia described it as a multimedia computer, and that description made sense at the time. It could take photos, record impressive video, provide navigation, play music, browse the web, and run third-party software while still fitting in a pocket. For many American buyers, it was expensive and more difficult to obtain than the phones heavily promoted by local carriers. That only increased its reputation among people who closely followed mobile technology. The N95 represented an older approach to building an advanced phone. Instead of removing buttons and ports, Nokia added more of them. It had moving parts, physical controls, connectivity options, features, and menus everywhere. In 2007, that version of the future still looked incredibly exciting. Then came the original iPhone. It went on sale in the United States on June 29, 2007, and the experience of using a phone began to change. Instead of navigating with a number pad, stylus, trackball, or joystick, users tapped, flicked, and pinched a large multi-touch display. The first iPhone was limited in many ways. It had no app store at launch, used a slower edge connection, lacked copy and paste, and its 2-megapixel camera could not record video with the original software. But those missing features did not diminish how revolutionary the interface felt. Scrolling looked natural. Web pages behaved more like they did on a computer. Photos could be enlarged by moving 2 fingers apart on the screen. Features that sound ordinary today looked almost unbelievable in 2007. Apple sold the original iPhone through AT&T in 4GB and 8GB versions. The starting price was $499 with a contract. It combined a phone, a widescreen iPod, and an internet communication device. We do not miss it because it is better than today's iPhones. We miss the feeling of seeing and using something completely new. For many people, touching that screen for the first time made the future feel visible. The Nokia 5310 XpressMusic arrived later in 2007 and proved that traditional phones still had plenty of life left. It was thin thin, light, colorful, and focused on something people used every day: music. Dedicated playback buttons beside the screen allowed users to pause a song or skip to the next track without opening a menu. It also had a standard 3.5mm headphone jack, Bluetooth audio, a micro SD card slot, an FM radio, and a 2-megapixel camera. The red or blue trim gave it a youthful look without making the phone bulky or difficult to carry. For many owners, the 5310 replaced a separate MP3 player. It stored favorite albums, custom ringtones, Java games, photos, and messages on one tiny device. It was also more affordable than many premium smartphones. This was not always the phone people admired through a store window. It was often the phone they actually carried to school, work, concerts, and family gatherings. The 5310 reminds us that a phone did not need to be the most advanced model available to become an important part of someone's life. By 2008, the BlackBerry Curve 8330 helped bring BlackBerry culture beyond corporate offices. Available through American CDMA carriers, including Verizon and Sprint, it offered the familiar BlackBerry keyboard in a friendlier and more consumer-focused package. The small keys required practice, but once users developed muscle memory, typing could become incredibly fast. Many users could write complete messages without looking carefully at every key. The trackball made navigation precise, while the blinking red notification light created an almost irresistible urge to check the phone. Email, text messages, and BlackBerry Messenger turned the Curve into a constant connection to friends, family, school, and work. What people miss most is the physical interaction. Every message had the rhythm of real button presses. You could feel where one key ended and the next one began. Touchscreens are far more flexible, but the Curve made communication feel focused and satisfying. When you picked it up, you knew exactly what it had been designed to do. The Nokia E71 also arrived in 2008, offering a different interpretation of the QWERTY smartphone. Instead of the rounded plastic shape associated with many BlackBerry models, Nokia used a remarkably slim body with metal details and a textured stainless steel back. The E71 ran Symbian and offered Wi-Fi, GPS, 3G mobile data, a 3.2-megapixel camera, expandable storage, document tools, and strong email features. It could also switch between work and personal home screen setups, making it feel professional without being completely restricted to business use. This was the type of phone that made people feel organized simply by holding it. The keyboard was compact but responsive. The build quality felt premium, and the battery could last far longer than many modern smartphones. It was not available at every American carrier store in its original unlocked form, but the people who used one often became extremely loyal to it. The E71 remains one of Nokia's most refined designs because it managed to feel thin, solid, professional, and practical at the same time. The BlackBerry Bold 9000 closes our list because it captured BlackBerry's confidence near the end of the decade. Announced in 2008 and released through AT&T in the United States that November, it felt like a premium version of everything BlackBerry had learned. Its high-resolution display was exceptionally sharp for the time. The redesigned keyboard used metal dividers between the rows, the back had a leather-like finish, and the phone supported 3G connectivity, Wi-Fi, and GPS, along with a 2-megapixel camera, expandable storage, and BlackBerry's push email system. The Bold was both a status symbol and a serious communication tool. Messages arrived quickly, the keyboard encouraged long replies, and the red notification light became part of daily life. Some users loved seeing it flash. Others probably developed the habit of checking it every few minutes. The Bold 9000 belonged to a time when an advanced smartphone did not need to be a giant sheet of glass. It had curves, buttons, textures, and a clear identity from every angle. That personality is one of the main reasons so many former owners still remember it with affection. Now it's your turn. Which of these phones did you own, and which one do you miss the most today? Maybe it was your first phone, the one you used to message your friends, or the one you always wanted but never had. Share your memories in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.